And I think Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and in their heart of hearts, watched those games this weekend and said, we want Patrick Mahomes, we want Josh Allen, we want something approximating that level of play out of our quarterback. And so to me, that kind of muddies the waters when it comes to Jalen Hurts' future.
Birds 365 here on the JAKIB YouTube channel with Mullen McDonald. And we are joined by a third personality. He is the preeminent columnist, my opinion, here in Philadelphia. And we're going to get him on to talk about quarterback because he wrote a big-time article in the Inquirer about what do you say after your Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen do what they do about Jalen Hurts here in town. But we've got a lot of other things to talk about, with him about as well. Mike Sielski from the Inquirer joins us here on Birds 365. Michael, Happy New Year, my friend. We haven't talked to you since. How's it going so far in 2022?
It's going great, guys. Thanks for having me. Very busy with book selling and
big
marketing.
Star now everywhere. Mike Sielski, I'm thrilled you stopped by.
I don't know about the big star part, John. I'm about a step away from, putting a sandwich board on me and standing out at Broad and Market and saying we'll sell Kobe books for food.
Well, it's a very good book, and everybody obviously should get it. The Rise, Kobe Bryant and the Pursuit of Immortality, the rise of KobeBook.com. So we'll get that out of the way quickly, Mike. But I do want to talk about some of the book in Kobe, but we'll hit, because we're a football show, we'll hit the football stuff first. And you did write a great column about the quarterback situation. But before that, I want to get to Brandon Brooks, because you've been around Brandon for a while. What a great player to cover over the years. In a lot of ways, I think his legacy off the field is greater than on the field. No, by the way, on the field, it was short. It was a short span. But those first 4 seasons in the Doug Peterson era, there was not a better offensive guard in football. So when you have that combination, also the things that he brought as far as visibility to mental health issues, especially, a guy 6'5", 340 pounds. And you say, well, he's not afraid of anything. And he's got issues just like everybody else. So your thoughts on covering Brandon Brooks over the years?
Going to miss him. One of those guys who, when we were allowed in the locker room way back when, you would make a beeline for if you saw him there. In part because you knew his answers were going to be intelligent and honest. And that's what you're looking for in any kind of player or any kind of athlete you want to cover. You want somebody who's not going to feed you BS, who's going to be upfront with you, who regards you as a human being too. And that's one of the things that I thought, we could talk about Brandon first as this human being. Like, he knew we had jobs to do too. And there are fewer and fewer of those athletes around who don't regard people who do what we do as just kind of annoyances to be dealt with. He seemed to be pretty genuine about interacting with us, about understanding we had a job to do. And if you came prepared to ask him some good questions, he would give you good answers in return. Take it to him as an athlete in the field. Go back and watch the NFC Championship game in 2018 between the Eagles and the Vikings. His play in that game is remarkable. The block that he makes on LeGarrette Blount's go-ahead touchdown just clears a path for Blount to get to the end zone. And Brandon was even better than that, I thought, in the subsequent years. I mean, as you said, John, he was, one of the 4 or 5 best linemen, period, I think, in the NFL. And it's a shame that his career had to end so quickly. But by the same token, as you said, what he did for the issue of mental health among athletes, and even what he did to rehabilitate his first torn Achilles tendon.
Oh, unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. I remember, standing there with him after a game, I believe it was against the Bears in 2018 or 19, and he had just had an incredible game. And he sat there at his locker and talked to a group of us about what it was like and what he went through to get healthy again after that injury. And it was remarkable. And he took us through the whole thing in detail. Definitely somebody who's going to be missed when it comes to covering the Eagles.
John, I'm not a psychologist, and I loathe to play one, even here on YouTube. And I know that's not your foray either, but you're probably better suited to be able to talk about something like this because you're with these guys and get a chance to talk to these guys more than I do. First, Brandon Brooks, and then Lane Johnson. Two mega men who had mental health issues here in Philadelphia. A position where you would, the regular football observer would think, well, these guys, look at them. Of course they're fine. They can just deadlift their way out of any issues they have. But we've learned that that's not the case, first with Brandon and then with Layden Johnson. Is there something about that position that puts more strain on someone mentally? And we've seen two guys with just uber amounts of talent and a ton of success both succumb to mental health issues. Is it something about trying to be an offensive lineman in the NFL, in your opinion?
I think there might be something to that, Jody, insofar as offensive line is the one position on the offense, I feel like, other than quarterback, where you've got to know everything that's going on, number one. And number two, you are uber reliant on the people immediately around you. And it's different even from wide receiver, right? Wide receiver requires a level of confidence, a level of bravado, almost arrogance to play the position well, I think. Offensive line is different. It requires a lot of thinking in addition to being just a hulking, piece of, athleticism there, 6'5", 340 pounds, et cetera, et cetera. And I think so that might play into it a little bit. Again, I don't want to play psychologist either. But the thing about offensive linemen, John knows this, and Jody, you know this too, like they are the best guys in the locker room to talk to about football strategy, and because they have to know it all. And there's something I think about that position, in addition to what I just mentioned about it being kind of, on the offense, the ultimate team position. You're not catching the ball. You're not throwing the ball. You're not running with the ball. You're making all that other stuff happen. And so maybe from a personality standpoint, you kind of have to be oriented in a certain way to play that position and play it well. And maybe it opens, as a position, opens itself up to athletes of a certain personality type. Again, I don't want to generalize. I don't want to play pop psychologist here, but there might be something to what you're saying.
Yeah, Mike, one of the things that always struck me to the point where I asked Brandon about it yesterday was the way these guys, and specifically I'm talking about Brandon, Lane, and Jason Kelce, would talk about Jason Peters over the years. It always struck me because you got arguably the best center in football, the best right guard in football, the best right tackle in football, at least at portions of their career. And they all looked at this guy in reverence, and they always talked about him in these reverential terms. And I would say to myself, back end of Jason's career, Jason Peters, I'm talking about, he wasn't the same here as he once was. But when Brandon was giving me the answer, and ultimately guys like Nate Herbig and Jack Driscoll, they look at Brandon Brooks the way Brandon looked at Jason Peters. But then he started talking about social media. And he started talking about trying to live up to your reputation when you hit to that point. And, it's like the old adage, more money, more problems. Well, more accolades, more problems. You're always trying to live up to what other people think you are or think you should be. You think that's part of it?
I absolutely do. And especially, John, contrast what you just talked about with the nature of playing offensive line, which is mano a mano, macho-y macho, who's bigger, who's stronger, who dominates who on what play. I mean, that's an environment that, if you have a shred of doubt or, that can balloon into something, or it could create doubt in your own mind in a way that maybe some other positions in football don't. Again, we're kind of extrapolating some of our own thoughts onto what Brandon may or may not have thought. And I'm always hesitant to do that, but it's a fascinating kind of like, if you wanted to get a PhD in like the way offensive linemen think, I can't think of a couple of better examples of people you could sit down and talk to about it, than Brandon Brooks or Jason Kelce or Lane Johnson or Jason Peters, even if he'd be willing to talk to you about it. I'm not sure he would.
Yeah, Jason Peters, all-time great. but it's a lineage that the Eagles have created, and the key central figure is Jeff Stoutland, who just continues to get these guys up to speed and playing at levels that maybe we didn't think was going to be possible, but certainly Brandon Brooks has set the bar very high for those who will come after. All right, Mike, do want to talk to you about the column you wrote the other day about the quarterback position here in Philadelphia as compared to others out there in the league, specifically some AFC quarterbacks, two of which are going to play this weekend against each other, Mahomes and Burrows. We just saw Mahomes and Allen play against each other. We all agree that Jalen Hurts is not there just yet, but that's what happens. You're going with what's freshest in your mind, and we just saw an unbelievable show between those two AFC quarterbacks the other day. Is that where we have to measure Jalen Hurts against right now? Is that even fair to assume that Jalen Hurts can be anything near the producers that Mahomes and Allen are?
Well, Jody, it doesn't matter what we think. What matters is what Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman think. And John and I have talked about this before, and I've written about this before, and I know John is kind of in simpatico on this. Everybody knows how Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman regard the quarterback position. It is the alpha and the omega of your football team for the most part. And they are all about trying to find a franchise quarterback for a lot of reasons. They follow what is now conventional wisdom in the league, that you need an elite quarterback, generally speaking, to be an elite team, to kind of keep you competitive for a Super Bowl every single year. That's why they went out in 1999 and drafted Donovan McNabb. That's why they drafted Carson Wentz. That's why they signed Michael Vick to his big contract after the 2010 season. It's the residue of Andy Reid from him coming in here and kind of setting that mindset. So I would look at Jalen Hurts and I would say, okay, he's going to cost you less than $2 million next year under the salary cap. What do you do? Do you go the route of the 49ers, let's say, and say you don't have an elite quarterback, but you're saving some money relative to the cap, and so you can build a good team around him? Or do you try to go the route of the way these other teams have gone, and either by pinpointing or stumbling into a elite guy? And I think Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, in their heart of hearts, watched those games this weekend and said, we want Patrick Mahomes. We want Josh Allen. We want something approximating that level of play out of our quarterback. And so to me, that kind of muddies the waters when it comes to Jalen Hurts' future. Do I think, all things being equal, he's likely to be back as the starter next season? Like 52-48, in terms of percentages. But I don't see how you could look at the history of this team and think to yourself anything other than Lurie and Roseman watched that weekend and said, oh my gosh, that's the future of the NFL. And we're not going to be part of it if we don't have a quarterback like those guys.
So, Mike, some people, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, will point to Josh Allen early in his career. There were accuracy issues. There were decision-making problems, processing problems, and he elevated his game. He was able to develop as a player. Is Jalen Hurts capable of developing to become that type of player? And I'll put Patrick Mahomes off to the side. I think we all know he's sort of that generational talent. Mm-hmm. But can he turn into a top-tier quarterback? And when I say top-tier, top 10, top 12, maybe not 1, 2, or do we already have enough information? Do you have to follow the courage of your convictions if you're Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and say, look, you're right. It's easiest. You can win a lot of ways in this league. The 49ers proved that. But guess what? You're not going to win with a block punt every week, a block field goal. The margin of error decreases if you don't have a superstar quarterback. Is that just always going to be the Eagles' default setting?
All right, so let's unpack a lot. You said a lot there, John, so let's unpack it. Number one, the comparison between Allen and Hurts. I don't think anybody would look at Josh Allen's physical skills as a quarterback when it comes to playing the position either from the pocket or on the move and say Jalen Hurts has those skills to that degree. He clearly does not have Allen's arm strength, which I'm not sure anybody in the NFL does. Maybe Mahomes does. And that was a big reason that the Bills, you can tell I have basketball in the brain. The Bills took a chance on him in drafting him out of Wyoming. It was that despite the accuracy issues, he could throw the ball through a brick wall. And if you play in Buffalo, you got to be able to do that. Yeah. So, they were going to take that chance that they could mold him into the quarterback he now, by all accounts, appears to be. Okay. Now, Jalen can do some really good things, and Jalen can improve. I don't think there's any doubt about that he can continue to get better. The question the Eagles have to answer is, how much better do they think he can get? And what are the pieces that he would need around him? It's, like I pointed out in the column, it's not as simple as just saying, get a franchise quarterback. It is get a quarterback and then put him on the sliding scale of how good is he and how much do we have to pay him versus how good is he and how much does he allow us to build a team around him? You're trying to do both at the same time. Again, that was why the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, 2018. It wasn't just that Carson Wentz was an MVP caliber quarterback for the first 13 weeks of the season, and then Nick Foles played out of his mind in the playoffs. It was that those guys cost so little money under the salary cap that the Eagles could build for that season a terrific team around them. They could get Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey and Timmy Jernigan and Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount, et cetera, and build a really good roster around those guys because they had the cap flexibility to do that. Hurts clearly allows you to do that next season if you keep him as the quarterback. And the question they have to ask themselves is, okay, let's say Russell Wilson wants to come to Philadelphia. What do we have to give up to get him? And by giving up what we would have to give up, are we hampering what we can ourselves in terms of what we can put around Russell to maximize what he is, right? If the cost of getting Russell Wilson is a couple first round draft picks and the fact that now he's taking up more money under the cap, does it hamstring you when it comes to building the team around him? So while I look at Jalen Hurts and say, boy, I don't think he's going to approximate what Josh Allen is or what Joe Burrow is or Patrick Mahomes is, maybe the Eagles could build a team around him next season because he costs so little money and be good. But that's me. I'm not sure Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman look at it that way.
All right, hypothetical for you again, even though you're not Jeff Lurie or Howie Roseman. Your opinion is well respected here on this show and elsewhere. Hypothetical, if the cost is the same, 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, 3 first-round picks over a period of time, and it's a one-day sale, Russell Wilson from Seattle, Deshaun Watson from Houston, and you're Howie Roseman, you have to make the call tomorrow. Can't wait to see how Deshaun stuff plays out. Yes, Russell Wilson's getting older with every single day, but still looked pretty damn good to me this year. If the price was the same for the two guys, but you had to pull the trigger tomorrow, Watson, Wilson, pass.
Tomorrow, I pass. I certainly don't consider Watson, both for off-the-field reasons and for the possibility that those off-the-field reasons will affect you on the field. Too much of a wild card. And just from a principle standpoint, I wouldn't pursue Deshaun Watson at this point until and if he is cleared of all these charges. As far as Russell Wilson goes, I think he's a great quarterback. I do. And at 33, he could continue to be a productive one for a while. That's the way the league is now. But I would not pull the trigger on that because I think the benefit of having Jalen Hurts on his rookie contract and the possibility that he can continue to improve outweighs the go get Russell Wilson now. I think we undersell to a degree players' developments nowadays, right? Like, are there all that many examples of guys who blossomed later in their careers? No, there aren't that many examples, but it happens. And so I would look at that and say, Jalen Hurts has checked off some of the things that you need to check off if you are going to be a starting quarterback in Philadelphia. The locker room respects him. He seems to be able to handle the media market and the fan base really well, which if you don't think that's a factor, then you were not here for the Carson Wentz and Donovan McNabb eras in Philadelphia. Both supremely talented quarterbacks, both of them guys who had trouble within the market because of handling it and perceptions and pressure and all that kind of stuff. Hurts, by all accounts, doesn't let that stuff bother him. So you have to take those factors into consideration too. It's not just, can he throw the ball through a brick wall? It is, can he handle everything around him? Because he's a human being too. And for me, as you said, Jody, got to pull the trigger tomorrow. I'm going to stick with Jalen Hurts.
Now, how much does this particular year play into any kind of sense of urgency in this standpoint, Mike? You have 3 first-round picks. That's not common. So you have 15, 16, 19 as we stand here today. Now, everyone says the quarterbacks in the draft aren't good enough, but there's too much groupthink in the NFL. Let's wait to see what the Eagles evaluate, and Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, all those guys. But even if they don't like those quarterbacks, you have that extra draft capital. If you kick the can down the road, let's see how this develops, you're not going to have the ability to go get Russell Wilson type players or Deshaun Watson type players if he's cleared of his legal entanglements. How much does the circumstance play into the Eagles' need to speed up this decision?
It plays into it a lot, John. And to your point about quarterbacks, this not being a quarterback-rich draft, yeah, let's see come March and April. Let's see after the Senior Bowl, and let's see after the Combine, because these things have a funny way of changing. All of a sudden, because the position is so highly valued around the league, I think teams often talk themselves into, hey, Mitch Trubisky, it looks pretty good to me. I mean, nobody was talking about Carson Wentz as the number 2 overall pick in the draft in January of 2015 or 16, January 2016. Nobody was talking about him in that regard. So let's see how things play out. I think a lot of teams can talk themselves into a lot of different things ahead of the draft. But yeah, you're right. I mean, knowing Howie, they're going to have some kind of plan, right? With flexibility built into that plan. And again, I come back to what I would do is a whole lot different from what Howie and Jeffrey are probably thinking about doing. They're going to evaluate these quarterbacks as they always do in this draft. They're going to evaluate the quarterbacks that may or may not be available through a trade. And they're going to say to themselves, okay, if now is the time to get Russell Wilson and he's available, I would bet on them trading for Russell Wilson. I just would. Go ahead, Jody.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were
whatever, man. Just talk whatever you want to talk. It's fine.
Thank you for helping us run Birds 360.
What is this, your show, man?
As a matter of fact, I was going to follow in McMullen's footsteps, sticking with the in this situation line of thinking. Tom Brady could retire. Aaron Rodgers could either retire or be in the AFC. Sean Payton is not coaching the New Orleans Saints this year, and I think he's one of the best coaches on the planet. So the NFC hierarchy could shake pretty well during this offseason. Do the Eagles react to that, or do they keep the wide picture? We like to be in it every single year. That's our goal, to every year be in the mix for a championship. Or do they get more aggressive because they see an opening for 2022?
I don't think they're at the stage that they were in 16 and 17, where they were so high on Wentz that they said to themselves, okay, he's getting better. We've got our guy. We believe in him. Therefore, we're going to go make big moves or make enough moves for the short term, right? They were smart in what they did in 17. They said to themselves, we've got an up-and-coming quarterback. We're going to roll the dice that he is going to get even better than he was in his rookie year when he showed flashes of greatness. And we will put the pieces around him to maximize him while he's on his rookie contract. I don't think they're quite there with Jalen Hurts, right? But I think your point is well taken, Jody, particularly with respect to the NFC East, right? I mean, the Cowboys are a bit of a mess only because they can't seem to get out of their own way when it comes to the playoffs. And they'll have a great regular season, and then they'll take a step backward, and then they'll have a great regular season, and they'll take a step backward, and they'll lose in the playoffs. And so they're always trying to figure it out. And you still have Washington and the Giants, who basically are messes, right? And, Taylor Heineke is okay, but he's not putting the fear of God in anybody. And I think it's an open question whether the Giants are going to get Daniel Jones to the point that he becomes a major factor as a quarterback in the NFL and in the division. So, they may look at it and say, hey, we're ahead of the game already. We can afford to, roll the dice with Hurts or whatever the case may be. I'm not, you take those things into consideration. I'm not sure it's enough for them to go all in, or to try to let's make a run for the division title in the Super Bowl this year based on what's going on around the conference or the division.
All right, Mike, last one from me, because I want to get your thoughts on things outside of football, because there's two big things. Well, first, I want to talk about the book, and I want to talk about Kobe's origin story, and that's basically what it's about. But number one, I want to ask you, how close was LaSalle to becoming reality as a LaSalle alum? So that's my Kobe question. And then I want to talk about baseball. So keep this in your head. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, not elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame again. I want to get your thoughts on that. So those two things, handle them how you want.
Okay, so I'll start with the LaSalle Kobe question first. This is a question near and dear to my heart as a 1997 LaSalle alumnus. I was an undergrad at the time that Kobe was weighing what to do. Joe Bryant, of course, his dad was an assistant coach at LaSalle. And for a couple of years, we lived under the delusion that Kobe might actually decide to come play ball for the Explorers at 20th and Olney, which he actually considered as a sophomore and a junior. In fact, his dad, Joe, had grand plans of thinking that Speedy Morris might get fired and that Joe would become the head coach. And Joe would get Kobe and several of Kobe's friends on the AAU circuit, including Richard Rip Hamilton and Shaheen Holloway and Lester Earl, to come play at LaSalle and kind of recreate the Fab Five from Michigan in the early 90s. Once the summer of 1995 rolled around and Kobe was playing pickup and scrimmaging against Jerry Stackhouse and Rick Mahorn and Sean Bradley and all these Division I college players from the Philly area, that went out the window. It also went out the window for Duke and North Carolina and all the other colleges who wanted Kobe too. Yeah. Kobe knew he was going to go straight to the NBA after that summer. So thank you for bringing up such a painful memory, John. As Billy Crystal says in The Princess Bride, why don't you give me a nice paper cut and pour lemon juice on it? Just kidding. As far as the Baseball Hall of Fame, the writer should not be involved in this. Nobody who regards him or herself as a member of the independent media should be voting on any kind of award affiliated with any kind of sport like this. And I've been banging this drum forever. My friend and former colleague at the Inquirer, Bob Ford, had a terrific tweet about this late last night. It's not about us. The Baseball Hall of Fame can use whatever standards it wants to use to decide who gets into the hall. And as members of the media, we can stand back and critique them and criticize them and rip them up and down if we want to, but we should not be involved in the process. And what you're seeing and what you saw in this recent vote was David Ortiz, who tested positive for steroids, getting into the Hall of Fame, and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens not getting in based on no other standard other than writers liked David Ortiz and they did not like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. That's what this came down to. And you can rationalize in any other way you want to, but that's what this is. And that's wrong. What is the standard? There is no standard. Now, when it comes to Halls of Fame, my standards are different from everybody else's. I really put the accent on fame. So I said this on the radio yesterday morning. To me, Roger Maris would be in the Hall of Fame based on his 61 home run season alone. Don Larson would be in the Hall of Fame because he threw a perfect game in a World Series game. Kirk Gibson would be in. If you look at the NFL, somebody like, we should consider whether, and I'm serious about this, whether Nick Foles, or a guy like Flipper Anderson, who caught 15 passes for 336 yards in one game, sets a record that's never going to be broken. Should he be in the Hall of Fame for that? Those things stand out so much that I feel like those figures or players should be recognized. certainly more than a guy like a Harold Baines, who was just a pretty good hitter for 20 years in Major League Baseball and just, stat padded for those 2 decades.
I hope you reach out to Gabriel Davis, who caught 200 yards in passing
how about
this
that?
past week. He's
By the way, Mike,
bound in Mike
I don't know,
Sielski's
Flipper.
Think about it.
Last time Jamar Chase played the Kansas City Chiefs, he had 266. So Flipper might still be in trouble.
Flipper had 366,
Yeah,
I think,
I know.
or something, or 336, something close to it. Yeah. I'm just using him as an example to kind of prove the point.
And Pro Football, by the way, does do things. So, like, they'll put Nick Foles' jersey in the Hall of Fame. They won't put the player, but they'll try to put the moment in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and football is different too, John, because the lifespan of a career is so much shorter, right?
Yeah.
And baseball doesn't, with certain exceptions like Sandy Koufax, it doesn't look at it that way. And I think it ought to. The fact that Scott Rowland is getting 65% of Hall of Fame voters' votes and Ryan Howard is getting 2%, to me is ridiculous. Ryan Howard was a far greater player at his peak than Scott Rowland was. Don Mattingly was the best hitter in baseball for a 6 to 7 year period.
Yeah.
The Hall should honor that level of greatness over a shorter period of time more often than it does.
I'm with you. I don't like trying to make, I watch Barry Bonds. I watch Roger Clemens. I saw it. I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. I don't know who Barry Bonds hit a home run off of that was juicing. I don't know who Roger Clemens struck out that was juicing. Just put a damn plaque that says this is the steroid era.
Yeah.
Boom. It's a museum.
Yeah.
Easiest solution ever.
I agree with you, John. You can't wipe that history away. Bonds and Clemens were such a big part of that era of baseball. They dominated that era, not just in terms of their performance on the field, but the discussion of it. Same thing with Alex Rodriguez. And you have these voters leaving them out just because they don't like them. Same standard applies to Curt Schilling. I don't like what Curt Schilling says about media members, or I don't like his politics or anything like that. The guy is a freaking Hall of Fame pitcher. He just has the credentials. So freaking vote him in. Who cares what he thinks about, Donald Trump or Barack Obama or journalists or anything like that? Yeah, they're terrible opinions. I don't like them. He's still the guy I'd want in Game 7 with everything on the line.
All right, Sielski, I'm going to get you on my radio show, and you and I are going to do an hour on the Hall of Fame.
Sounds good.
We see it completely differently, but that's all right.
Come at me.
Ask you one last Kobe question, which for those who we tried to get Mike on yesterday, and he said, "Jordan can't.
Too busy. Too big a star."
It's the anniversary of Kobe's passing, and I had not even realized that. So rest in peace, Kobe, and again for his family, his friends, and everyone else. We know how much he's being missed. But I've got a similar question to the one that John asked, but not back to college days, to the NBA days. When he does decide to go out, I had someone once tell me, kind of off the record, that it was a done deal that Kobe Bryant was going to the Nets. That John Calipari was going to pick Kobe Bryant, that he loved Kobe Bryant, and he certainly was selecting before Charlotte, who picked him, trade him to the Lakers, and he was going to pick him. And John was told, yeah, don't do that. Kobe's going somewhere else. We want him to go somewhere else. It's going to be Kobe going somewhere else. And Calipari, whoa. It's going to be my pick. When I'm on the board, I can pick whoever I want. And he was told, well, yeah, you can, John, but how would you like to pick a guy and never get your hands on him? Because that's what's going to happen if you take Kobe Bryant. He ended up taking another Philly guy, Kerry Kittles, instead. How much truth to that story was there?
There's a good bit of it. It's not fully true, Jody. First of all, the story is true insofar as the Nets seriously considered taking Kobe Bryant, and Calipari liked him a lot. He didn't like him as much as John Nash, who was the Nets general manager at the time and had been hired at the same time as Calipari to kind of, be a wingman to Calipari. Calipari was the coach. He was the team president. He had a ton of power, and Nash was there to kind of shepherd him and be like the consigliere to him because Nash had so much experience as an NBA executive. Nash loved him. Nash wanted to take Kobe. Arn Tellem, who was Kobe's agent, and he and Kobe wanted Kobe to end up with the Lakers. So they had to head fake the Nets. So the day of or day before the draft, and this is all in the book, Kobe and Tellem called Calipari and Nash and said, if you guys take Kobe, he will go play in Europe.
Yep.
He will go play overseas rather than go to East Rutherford and the swamps of Jersey and play for the Nets. Now, the other factor that you didn't mention, that I mentioned in the book, is that the Nets ownership did not want the team to take Kobe Bryant because, as Joe Taub, who was the kind of the basketball-oriented member of the ownership group, told Nash, if we take him and he's good, he's just gonna sign somewhere else when he's a free agent anyway. Now think about that. Like the level of like insecurity and like, you know, how you think of yourself as a franchise. We can't draft a good player. He's just gonna leave anyway. So between all those factors, and the fact that David Falk, who represented Kerry Kittles, was kind of lobbying Calipari to take Kittles and saying, if you don't take Kittles, none of my guys will sign with you either. There were all these pressures and machinations and all this stuff. They took the safe way out. Calipari took the safe way out, much to John Nash's chagrin. There was a meeting at the draft. The Nets power people have a meeting before the draft, and Calipari stands up and says, if we have the 8th pick, if Kerry Kittles is there, we're going to take Kerry Kittles. And if he's not there, we're going to take Kobe Bryant. And John Nash is just crestfallen because he knows that Kobe is a better player. So that's how that all played out.
I'd gotten from a pretty good source that that's exactly the way that it played out. And it is documented so well in the book that is on the bookshelves now. He's making the rounds. He's going to show up in other places. He won't get as much fun out of it as he does when he comes on Birds 365 with our guys. And I am going to get you on to Talk Hall of Fame on my radio show.
Great.
Mike, appreciate you coming on board. When can anybody get out and see you do any book signings in the area here in Philadelphia over the next couple weeks or months?
Well, actually tonight, guys, Thursday night, Ray Dittinger and I are going to be at Pugler's Kitchen in Bridgeport, Pennsylvania, as part of a fundraiser for Glenn Macnow. A friend of Glenn's was in an accident and is now a quadriplegic. So Glenn is holding a fundraiser for his friend. And Ray and I are going to be there signing books. Ray's book, his autobiography, his memoir, and my book, The Rise. So we'll be there tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. Come on by. I have said this to Glenn. It is not a lie. I'm not just saying this to curry favor with him. The Conshohocken Brewing Company's Ring the Bell Pilsner is my favorite beer. So I hope that I am in a condition to be able to sign books come like 8:30, 8:45. Because I may just have a few of them. Yeah, come early. I'm just kidding. But yeah. So come on out tonight if you can.
I take it the wife's going with you because if you're gonna do well enough with
no, I have my driver's coming. Jody.
Oh, the driver.
Yeah.
We knew book sales were good. We didn't know they were that good.
I'm kidding.
Very good to hear. Mike, thanks much for hopping on board.
Yeah.
You know we're going to get you on playing during the off season. Thanks, bud.
Thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Mike Sielski comes on to talk football with us, but he can talk absolutely anything. And his book.
Yeah, I had to get that in. The Rise of KobeBook.com. So keep Mike in his personal drivers. Go there, buy the book.
Yeah, gas is expensive these days to be able to get Mike back and forth. So feel free to go out to their book signing tonight, and we'll keep getting Mike on here on Birds 365. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, Mac and Mac guys, coming right back here on Birds.